speaking of Time's Mouth, I don't want to talk too much about the plot because I want people who are watching this interview to like not get things spoiled for them so that they can like grab it and read it. But I wanted to ask about Ursa.
Mhm.
Ursa was really interesting to me. She's not a perfect person by any means.
No.
And I think that we see a little glimpse of her, sort of subconsciously or consciously, acknowledging that she engages in behaviors or actions that are reminiscent of her parents and her upbringing,
Mhm.
sort of like in throughout the book. I specifically remember at the very very beginning when she ran away, how she felt herself doing things that her mother does.
Yeah.
Um, and there's this throughout the book this cycle of trauma or generational trauma that just sort of happened to emerge when writing the story. And I thought that that was interesting. I was curious because you mentioned that female characters aren't like not allowed to be perfect, or they're given different standards than male characters are given. And I was curious, your feelings on that sort of like situation on when writing, because you wrote two female character leads and then one male character lead. So I was
Mhm.
wondering about that sort of process and that sort of experience.
Good question. So, I do think that people tend to be more judgmental of female characters, whether they are aware of it or not. And I have seen this by reading Goodreads reviews of my own books and books that I love. I see that a lot of people, often other female readers, really get upset when women in novels transgress or do something mean. And then I'm like, this is fiction. You know that, right? This idea that the characters we read about, some people, I'm not including myself in this, they want them to be sort of more I, I ideal humans. And I'm actually much more interested in like messy humanity and when people don't make the right choice or have a private thought that's less charitable. And I love a traditionally, unlikable character, male or female. I just think like a wicked character is sort of fun to read. But a lot of people did not like my character Frida in California. They found her unlikable. I did not mean to make her unlikable. So that felt kind of bad. Like, oh God, am I just a terrible person? So then with woman number 17, I purposely wrote a character that I thought a lot of people wouldn't like. I enjoyed her. I thought she was interesting, but I thought she was damaged and a little bit cruel. And they both the younger and the older character, I think could be considered unlikable, but I kind of knew that and leaned into that. And then with Time's Mouth, I wanted to tell a story, like I said, that covered a lot of time, but had some like classic storytelling elements that I had never tried before. And one of those things was this idea of a hero and a villain. Um, and so Opal, who's Ursa's granddaughter, she's supposed to be like the good character. Ray, who's the male character you mentioned, is Opal's father. And he and Cherry are not, I don't think you're really, I think you feel, my goal is that you feel for them, whether they do stuff that's reprehensible, you really like are, you have great sympathy for them. Ursa was always going to be my villain, where she does bad things. But because the story starts with Ursa, it's been very interesting to see reader responses. Some people, their response was, I really didn't like Ursa and I was really upset that she was the hero of the story. And then I kept reading and I realized there were multiple characters and then I was meant to feel this like animosity towards her. Then there's other characters who I think are kind of more similar to how I read is when I'm given a character's consciousness and I'm living with them, even if they're quote unquote unlikable or villainous, I can't help but sympathize with them because I start to understand why they're doing what they're doing. And so I have a couple of friends who read the book and they're like, what are you talking about? Ursa's not a villain. Because they if they didn't identify with her, at least they understood why she was doing stuff and they felt a love for her that they kind of can't help but feel when they're reading. Um, so but you get to see she doesn't think about it, she represses it, so you don't know exactly, but you know that she was abused as a child, so you know that going in, you know that she suffers some heartache, you know that she loves her son but she's a bad mom, but you know she has all these longings. So I think she's different than like a fairy tale villain where you don't understand their motivations until Disney comes back and retells it from the point of view of the villain. So that's where I landed. So I don't know. Do you consider her a villain? What do you think?
I don't consider her a villain. I consider her an antagonist. Um, I
He
think
is definitely the antagonist.
yeah, well, yeah, of course, but I mean in the sense of that, like, it's not it's common, but it's not always that you have two characters who are one is morally good and one is morally bad. It's just so that the antagonist goes against what they want is clashes with what the protagonist wants. So it's more so in
Exactly.
that it's more so in that sense because Ursa, she didn't intend to become like
Yes.
what she becomes. So it's more of a so in that sense I don't consider her a villain
Yeah.
because it wasn't her fault in a way.
Yeah.
Air
I think
quotes.
it's hard to have a true villain in any like contemporary literary fiction because like then you would just have someone who acts from pure evil for no reason other than to like be evil, which I don't think you can really write a character's perspective from that because like there's nowhere to go. So it's complicated.